Good morning and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Fred Hutton. Over the next hour, we'll take a look back at the top news stories from the past 6 days. And undoubtedly this week, the top story in this province related to the Hibernia project. On Thursday, the Federal Energy Minister Jake Epp confirmed that two companies are currently negotiating to take over Gulf Oil's 25% stake in the stalled Hibernia project. And as First Edition reported earlier in the week, one of those companies is Texaco. Jake Epp told some 400 oil people on Thursday that while no deal has been finalized yet, there is every expectation that the negotiations will be completed by the time Gulf is scheduled to pull out in the early fall. Jim Toms reported on Thursday.
It was dramatic high noon at Hotel Newfoundland. Jake Epp was in town, and he was getting ready for a major announcement on Hibernia at the NOIA luncheon.
End of May, early June. We were contacted by a company that was willing to consider the 25% share of Gulf. Up to that point in time, we had companies, none of them wanting to look at that amount of action. They have indicated serious interest, and we are presently negotiating with two companies to pick up the Gulf share.
Mr. Epp identified one of the companies as Texaco. The other, not identified, is in a non-tax-paying position in Canada, but that's being taken care of.
The Government of Canada will provide the same benefits, or relatively the same benefits, to a company in a non-tax-paying position in Canada as companies presently in the consortium are eligible for under the Hibernia Agreement.
It was the kind of thing his audience had been waiting all week to hear. Not only new partners in sight, but some problems with existing partners being cleared away.
So what we have in place today is a company and companies that are looking at the 25%. We will be entering and intensifying our negotiations as of last night in the next numbers of months in order to complete our due diligence, or their due diligence, and it is my belief that we will have success. Additionally, the Gulf situation is being resolved. It is being resolved both in terms of ownership and liabilities, and should not be an impediment in any transference of ownership to a new investor. As well, Petro-Canada remains a strong partner in the Hibernia project, and in the negotiations, that issue is being settled as well.
None of this seemed to be anything new for Premier Clyde Wells. He's been kept up to date on all the negotiations and shared general rejoicing over the news.
So yes, I feel very good. I'm hesitant to say to the Newfoundland people, we're totally out of the woods, there's nothing to worry about, because the deal is not finally settled. So I always have that level of reserve.
It is my assessment that we will negotiate with them through the summer and early fall, at which stage I believe that we can conclude the arrangements.
In St. John's, Jim Toms for First Edition News.
Meanwhile, oil industry watchers met Thursday's announcement with what is best described as guarded optimism. They say Jake Epp's announcement that two potential investors are close to buying into Hibernia is positive. But those same oil industry watchers also say they won't be totally satisfied until the companies sign on the dotted line.
Jake Epp said that he was tight-lipped about the Hibernia negotiations because meetings with interested companies were taking place right up until just before he addressed the NOIA conference. While today's statements from Minister Epp weren't as final as some would have liked, they did offer comfort.
I think that it's very positive. I think that the problem of Gulf's leaving is resolved in principle.
We're still not there. They've given us several months at the outside, at least I hope it's the outside, for these negotiations to be complete. So we're hoping that that time will be a bridge, because the sooner the better that we can get on to business with a 100% Hibernia project.
The speculation is now over, and we have at least no more myth. There's an actual company that's looking at those shares, and now with the due diligence that will take place over the next 2 or 3 months, that certainly puts a lot of relief in our camp, and hopefully it'll be resolved, as Mr. Epp said.
Provincial Energy Minister Rex Gibbons says he hopes the announcement will ease tensions in the industry with respect to commitments to spending, now that the federal government has given the project a vote of confidence.
The other thing that we see in this today is the vote of confidence from the industry that offshore East Coast is a good place to be. It's going to be an industry for the future, like the North Sea was 20 years ago when they started to develop it there.
But what immediate impact the announcement will have remains to be seen. What it will do, says East Coast oil analyst Lee Schinkel, is buy investors some much-needed time.
It might help people who have nervous banks. If the bank is a little nervous about someone being overcommitted to this project, if there is no project, it might help there. I think that anything that creates an aura of optimism in Newfoundland right now is of advantage to all of us, to the entire province, and particularly to the business community.
Also this week, the constitutional battle between Newfoundland and Ottawa raged on. Premier Clyde Wells told members at a Rotary luncheon on Thursday that Newfoundland will not be pressured by Ottawa over constitutional reform. There has, of course, been the suggestion of linkage on constitutional reform and fish aid for the province. Premier Clyde Wells says if the federal government has any doubts at all, it should hold a referendum. Lynn Burry filed this report on Thursday.
9 Canadian premiers, including Clyde Wells, will meet with the Prime Minister on Monday. They've been given 2 weeks to come up with a new constitutional package. If a deal can't be reached, the federal government will put together its own package.
Mr. Wells is a complete constitutional fanatic. He's a person who seems to believe that some kind of a constitution that he believes to be a perfect one is of more importance than the unity of the country.
We are a nation of Canadian citizens, each of us equally at home in any province or territory of this country, with the right to move about and be accepted as an equal Canadian citizen in any part of the country. That doesn't seem to me to be too fanatic.
Today, Premier Wells said Unity Minister Joe Clark is behaving like a statesman. And he says, considering John Crosbie's comments, it's hard to believe he's in the same cabinet. The Premier made it very clear today that his position on the Constitution has not changed. He says there are principles that cannot be compromised. All provinces and all Canadians must be equal, and that's why he can't agree to a Quebec veto. As for Senate reform, the Premier says the federal government doesn't need his approval, and he questions why so much pressure is being put on this province.
Why pressure Newfoundland on the Senate? Why pressure Alberta on the Senate? If you've got 8 or 7 other provinces, you can get it approved. So why pressure Newfoundland on the Senate? And if you don't have the approval of 7 of the 10 provinces, then it should not be done in that way.
So why are they coming in approval?
Well, I don't know. You'll have to ask them that.
Premier Wells also says there will be no deals. He says a fish compensation package and the Constitution are 2 separate issues. For First Edition, I'm Lynn Burry.
One day later, on Friday, representatives from the federal and provincial governments signed a cooperative agreement worth over $39 million. The Strategic Investment and Industrial Development Agreement was signed by Federal Fisheries Minister John Crosbie and Newfoundland Premier Clyde Wells. Over the past week, the two men exchanged their different views on constitutional reform through members of the media. On Friday, however, they sat side by side, smiling and stating that they can put their differences aside when it comes to dealing with the Newfoundland economy.
We're still at odds on this issue, but we have other issues that have to be dealt with, and it's in the interest of the province that we deal with them. So that's the way the cookie crumbles.
It strikes me as odd that you should find it odd that Mr. Crosbie and I could have differences on constitutional issues and not have a reasonable degree of respect for one another's differences on those issues and somehow not be able to deal effectively with other issues. Why would you think we're so ineffective or inefficient is not to be able to cope with differences on one particular issue so as to enable us to continue to work on other issues.
This man should be put under surveillance.
Newfoundland's stand on constitutional issues isn't making it any easier for the federal cabinet to approve a compensation package for the failing fishery. That compensation package could require as much as $1 billion. Federal Fisheries Minister John Crosbie says right now the province's stand on constitutional reform is not a factor in the compensation equation. He says at least for now.
Newfoundland is paying an economic price for not going along with Ottawa on constitutional issues. No one will admit it, but Unity Minister Joe Clark came close last week.
At a very difficult time, right after Meech Lake, when not everybody in Ottawa was enthusiastic about helping Newfoundland.
Now, 2 years after Meech, John Crosbie is trying to persuade his federal colleagues to loosen tight purse strings for fishery aid. The crunch will come next week, when the northern cod fishery is closed, just as Ottawa gets very angry with the Newfoundland Premier.
We have already turned the other cheek when it comes to the Constitution with Mr. Wells. When it comes to Meech Lake, we proceeded on with the Hibernia agreement in any event. So
the sad fact is that fish stocks are not what they used to be, ravaged by overfishing to almost nothing. And cutting off northern cod will shut down 40% of the Newfoundland fishery. Just as this happens, Newfoundland is once again being blamed for the constitutional crisis, making it tougher for John Crosbie to get what he wants.
It isn't very helpful, and I think we've got to remember that if we want assistance, we've got to have a strong, united country if the nation is to be in a position to give us assistance.
In St. John's, Jim Toms for First Edition News.
We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with more of the week's top stories in just a moment.
I'm Tony Marie Wiseman. When news matters to you first, count on First Edition. Weeknights at 5:30, 5 o'clock in parts of Labrador on Canada's Superstation, NTV.
I'm Amanda Muse, and I'm in your community each weeknight during the NTV Evening News Hour. If there's an event or a good news story happening near you, email me at yourcommunity@ntv.ca. I'll see you soon.
Come all ye good people, I'll sing you a song about the poor people, how they get along. They start in the spring, finish up in the fall, and when it's all over, they've nothing at all, and it's hard, hard times. Go out in the morning, go on adrift still, it's over the side, you will hear the line nil. For out flows the jigger and freeze with the cold, and as for the starting, all gone in the hole, and it's hard, hard times. The fine sign of fishing we'll have by and by, the fine sign of fishing we'll have a goodbye. $7 for large and $6.50 for small. Throw out your West Indies, you've nothing at all, and it's hard, hard times. When you've got some washed and spread out for the dry, it'll take all your time for to brush off the flies. To keep off the maggots is more than you'll do. Then out comes the sun and it all splits in two, and it's hard, hard times. Then next comes the carpenter to build you a house. He'll build her so snug that you'll scarce find a mouse. With holes in the roof and the rain it will pour. The chimney will smoke and it's open the door, and it's hard, hard times. Next comes the doctor, the worst of them all, saying, what is the matter with you all the fall? He says he can cure you of all your disease. When your money he's got, you can die if you please. And it's hard, hard times. The best thing to do is to work with a will, for when it's all over, you're hauled on the hill. You're hauled on the hill and put down in the cold. And when it's all over, you're still in the hole. And it's hard, hard times.
A 29-year-old Upper Island Cove man pleaded guilty to 2 charges of criminal negligence causing bodily harm when he appeared in provincial court in Harbour Grace on Thursday. Raymond Hayward Mercer was charged after he allegedly spread the AIDS virus knowingly. 6 other related charges were dropped. Darren Rogers was in court in Harbour Grace on Thursday and filed this report on the proceedings.
Emotions ran high in the courtroom in Harbour Grace today as Raymond Mercer pleaded guilty to 2 counts of criminal negligence causing bodily harm. He had been accused of having unprotected sex after finding out he was HIV positive. The court began the pre-sentence hearing this afternoon with family members of the victims and one of the 2 victims testifying. Raymond Hayward Mercer arrived at court where he faced emotional family members of 2 young girls he was charged for transmitting the AIDS virus to. Mr. Mercer was notified of his HIV condition in April of last year. He didn't immediately inform authorities he was having a sexual relationship with a girl whose name has been banned from publication. The girl claims she had unprotected sex with Mr. Mercer a number of times. As well, another female, Karen Thompson of Mississauga, also claims Mr. Mercer had unprotected sexual intercourse with her last summer, not informing her he was HIV positive. Ms. Thompson wanted her name exempt from the ban so she could warn people that it could happen to them too. Both girls have since tested positive to having the virus which causes AIDS. Crown Attorney Kathy Knox asked the 2 mothers and the one claimant of the consequences of Mr. Mercer's actions. One mother stated if she had taken a gun and put to her head, it would have been better than to suffer like this. Defense lawyer Doug Harvey questioned the parents if they had tried to deter their daughters from seeing Mr. Mercer. One of the girls' parents said she had, but it didn't do any good. The other mother didn't know of her daughter's encounter with the defendant. The pre-sentence hearing didn't wrap up today because a key medical witness wasn't available to testify. Mr. Mercer is being held in custody. For First Edition, I'm Darren Rogers.
A private party in the capital city turned ugly on Tuesday night when more than 300 youths gathered at a home on Rennie's Mill Road. The host's original intention was to have 60 friends over to celebrate the end of the school year. However, by 9:30 in the evening, the group had swelled to 300. Police had to break up the event, and in the end, 5 people were arrested. As we hear in this report, the damage is estimated by the owner at about $25,000.
Rennie's Mill Road is normally a quiet area of St. John's, but last night the silence was broken when 300 youths showed up at this house looking for a party.
My daughter was expecting about 60 kids, and around 6 o'clock kids started coming in, although the party was supposed to start at 8, and so when I went upstairs at 8 o'clock there were about 30 kids, and by 9 o'clock the noise level was indescribable. So when I tried to open the bedroom door where I was watching TV, I couldn't, because there were so many kids pressed together that you couldn't even open the door.
Mrs. Callahan estimates that an extra 240 guests showed up, some of whom urinated in closets and vomited on the floor. As a result, Mrs. Callahan and her daughter spent most of last night and this morning cleaning up the mess. Dozens of empty beer and liquor bottles were stacked up out back, as well as one of 2 Persian rugs, ruined by bear stains and burn holes.
A lot of furniture damage. The floors look like they're going to have to be refinished. I would say a rough estimate, probably about $25,000.
Neighbors in the area couldn't believe the number of people who showed up for the party. Traffic in the area was so bad the street was blocked off. And when the partygoers refused to leave, the police had to be called in.
There were dozens and dozens of kids at the door banging and crashing and throwing beer bottles. And so by about 10 o'clock, I guess, the police arrived and started trying to get the kids out of the house.
12 police units had to go to respond to that scene, and there were 5 arrests made from drinking in public, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and similar items. But
Superintendent Gary Brown of the RNC says it's not an unusual complaint for this time of year, with parents going out of town for vacations. But Elizabeth Callahan was home when it happened, and here's why she went public to talk about the incident.
I'd like a lot of parents who knew their kids were coming to this house to ask them, what happened? Why did you stay? And why did you participate in this type of thing? And
2 masked men were foiled in an armed robbery attempt in Seal Cove on Thursday night. The 2 men entered a service station demanding money, but the attendant there wouldn't give in. Ron Jones refused to hand over the money, and for doing so, he was struck in the stomach with the butt end of a shotgun. In the end, the 2 would-be thieves fled on foot. With more on the attempted robbery, here's First Edition's Jim Toms.
Ron Jones was back at work this morning as though nothing had happened the night before. The 26-year-old gas bar attendant at John Cummings service station in Seal Cove showed absolutely no fear when 2 masked men approached the station about 11 p.m. He was waiting for them when they entered the door, one carrying a shotgun.
I threw one up against the wall, and I had one fella pinned up, the other fella took a shotgun, jabbed me in the ribs with it, and they took off outside. One fella had ski mask on, the other fella had scarf on his mouth and statin cap on. When they come in, I grabbed Buddy and threw him up against the door there.
Did they say anything?
Never opened their mouth. Never said a word.
I see. But they didn't get anything?
No, nothing. No.
Ron was still stiff and sore this morning from the shotgun poke in the ribs.
How did you feel through it?
Nothing. I didn't think nothing. It's just adrenaline was flowing, I guess. Afterwards, stiff, sore.
Yeah. But did you consider the risk you might be running? I mean, that shotgun could have been loaded.
Never crossed my mind.
You did what you felt you had to do.
They were going to shoot me anyway if they were going to, so.
Yeah.
Resisting armed robbers in this way is not something recommended by police. In fact, they strongly advise against any resistance whatsoever. So does Ron's employer.
Yeah, I told him he ran a very bad risk, actually. Someone with a gun comes in, you just stand back and let him do what they want.
Yeah.
You just don't take your life in your own hands. I don't expect that any of my employees.
But when he does it, though, you can't help feeling a certain admiration for it.
Definitely, I feel proud.
Police were there soon after it happened last night, and we're back on the scene this morning to get more details from Ron Jones. They also scoured nearby woods, where it is believed the men made their getaway. The irony is that even if they had reached the cash till, the robbers wouldn't have gained enough to make it worth their while.
Never is. It never is a large amount of cash. Exactly, all the cash was gone out of here at any given point in time. I can't specify the times, but we pick it up regularly. And there's no big amount of cash.
The last Ron saw of the 2 men, they were heading for the woods in this area. A police dog tracked them for some distance last night, but lost their scent on an ATV path. Police were back at the scene this morning looking around. They've got some leads, and you can expect that before long there will be arrests. In Seal Cove, Jim Toms for First Edition News.
We'll take a short break now. We'll be back in a moment with more of the week's top stories.
I awake here at the edge of the unknown universe. I sense all. I am life, rising from pure space, a dimension beyond man's imagination. I have seen many wondrous things, but I remain forever transfixed by one, a pale blue planet amid an endless sea of stars, Earth. Many of your millennia ago, my ancestors came to your planet and colonized the great civilization of Atlantis. You regarded us as godlike, our benevolent presence forming the basis of your most ancient civilizations. Within a few centuries, you began to isolate yourselves from one another. Suspicion, greed, and jealousy quickly turned to fear and hatred. Violence and war followed. We have watched in horror as humankind began to destroy one another. The city of Atlantis had been our greatest gift to humanity, to be the repository of all future knowledge. But knowing it could be used for great evil, we created a singular vessel to hold us and swept Atlantis away forever. Many of your lifetimes passed before the tip of Atlantis was found once again. A strange power beckoned a Norse explorer to rest upon her ancient shores. His name was Leif Erikson. Today, you call this discovery Newfoundland. Your histories tell us of individuals who held the Atlantean knowledge, who set their sights on new horizons, and through great hardships made the imagined real. You took pride in your theories and machines of ever greater complexity. But it has fragmented your spirit and hurled you further away from true wisdom of life and its purpose. To connect with the oneness, the source of the universe. Now I, known to you as Captain Atlantis, the spirit of life from the universal mind, will answer your call. There are already children among you with exceptional gifts. They are the seeds of your future, and you must free them. Your nation's spirit will be known as Captain Canada. You can bring peace and understanding to the world through your deeds and actions. You have so little understanding of your powers, but you will learn. You will master the source energies of your world, communicate telepathically, and control the future with your thoughts. And you will finally achieve true understanding. You will build a new world of cooperation and prosperity. Then I will diminish and travel beyond all form. Eternity is your word for what awaits you, for there truly is no end.
The provincial government is providing money for seasonal businesses to hire more people. Labour Minister Roger Grimes made that announcement on Tuesday when he announced a $2 million program to offset the cost of wages for interested employers. 2,000 short-term jobs are expected to be created as a result of the announcement. And as Darren Rogers reports, at least one business will be hiring an extra 10 people this year because of the program.
In the past, a number of businesses in the province of a seasonal nature, like the Carwood Resort, weren't able to avail of government funding to offset short-term hirings. But today in St. John's, Labour Minister Roger Grimes announced a new government initiative, which allows businesses involved in tourism, agri-foods, recreation, and environmental initiatives in particular, the opportunity to funding. Roger Grimes says the $2 million project will create 2,000 short-term jobs, something government admits is badly needed in these tough economic times.
And they've come to us repeatedly and suggested that we should find a mechanism whereby someone that operates on less than a year-round basis and is willing to employ additional people, if given a subsidy, should be able to avail of a subsidy. And that's what this seasonal employment generation program is intended.
There's been a lot of programs in place for long-term employment, for very little for seasonal.
Kevin Nolan, who runs the seasonal Carwood Resort, says he employed 38 people last year, and with expansion planned to increase his number of employees to 60 this year. But Mr. Nolan says this program changes that.
With that program in place, I could see us adding an extra 10 to that staff that we had already anticipated. So, to be at least an extra 10 people employed here because of that particular program.
Businesses in the province will receive funding from government up to $3 an hour for a 40-hour work week. Also included in the initiative is another $500,000 for the student employment program, which is expected to create another 400 jobs to help students offset educational costs. For First Edition, I'm Darren Rogers.
There was more reaction this past week to the provincial government's economic plan. Opposition leader Len Sims says it's nothing more than a condensed version of the 1987 Royal Commission report on employment and unemployment. As for the tax changes contained in this document, Mr. Sims says consumers could be hard hit by the harmonization of the GST with the retail sales tax. Our political reporter Lynn Burry filed this report on Wednesday.
This 70-page strategic plan is nothing more than a condensed version of the 515-page report of the Royal Commission on Employment and Unemployment.
Opposition leader Len Sims says the government's strategic economic plan contains very few new initiatives. He says the question that should be asked is why the government waited 3 years to implement the Royal Commission report recommendations. Mr. Sims says the only new measure is the proposed restructuring of the corporate tax rates. While the business community has welcomed that change, he wonders what it will mean. Len Sims says as long as the payroll tax remains in place, large-scale job creation in the private sector will be difficult to achieve.
And now, not only have they introduced the payroll tax, which has been to the detriment, I think, of job creation in this province and to the business community, they've now lowered the threshold. So even the smaller business with $100,000 payroll, who may have been considering employing some people and so on and broadening, why would they? And they have told us that.
When government unveiled its plan last Thursday, Premier Wells said the retail sales tax would be harmonized with the GST. The Premier also said the rate of the provincial tax could be lowered, possibly to 10%.
They may be able to reduce the retail sales tax by a couple of percentage points, from 12 down to 10. So you may save 2% on your clothing, but you may now have to pay 10% on electricity. So, I mean, the potential ramifications for the consumer are enormous.
For First Edition, I'm Lynn Burry.
I understand where the business.
Also this past week, the Wells administration was accused of discriminating against gays and lesbians. It was Lesbian and Gay Pride Week, and while a number of festivities were planned, the main focus of the week continued to be protection under the Human Rights Code for gays and lesbians. As Lynn Burry reported from Wednesday, they want government to review discrimination charges once more.
Gays and lesbians and some of their supporters gathered at the Confederation Building this morning to ask for protection under the Human Rights Code. That request is not new. Last August, 2 representatives of the group, Gays and Lesbians Together, met with then Justice Minister Paul Dix. They presented their case, but Mr. Dix said there will be no changes.
There's not likely to be in the near future an amendment to the Human Rights Code to that effect.
For members of the gay community, Mr. Dix's response was very disappointing. Today, 10 months after that meeting, gays and lesbians are still looking for an amendment to the code.
This administration, under Clyde Wells, justifies their inaction on this basic human rights issue with statements such as, "There is no popular support for sexual orientation protection." Human rights cannot be based on a popularity contest.
Some members of the gay community say the Wells administration is homophobic, and they don't want to be seen in any way as supporters of the so-called gay lifestyle. The people here say that attitude is prevalent among politicians, not just government members. Last year, a study conducted by Gays and Lesbians Together found that 87% of homosexuals in the province have experienced discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. 35% have been threatened with physical violence, and 19% have been physically assaulted. GALT spokesperson Tanya Doppler says many gays and lesbians live in fear.
The reality is you can lose your job, you can lose your family, you can lose your friends. There's just so much that you can lose that most of the lesbian and gay community can't afford to take the risk of coming out. So
5 other provinces have sexual orientation protection. In this province, amending the Human Rights Code is supported by a number of groups, including the St. John City Council. While no progress has been made over the past year, members of GALT say they won't give up. Their next move will likely be a meeting with the Justice Minister. For First Edition, I'm Lynn Burry.
On Thursday, 2 provincial by-elections were held, first to Ferryland District, where Conservative Loyola Sullivan held on to the seat held by the opposition. Mr. Sullivan narrowly defeated Liberal candidate Tom Best. The NDP candidate, Clee Newhook, finished a distant third. Voter turnout in Ferryland topped 80%. With more on the by-elections results, here's Jim Furlong.
There was an ebb and flow to the evening. At Liberal headquarters in Witless Bay, spirits were buoyed by early returns. Tom Best was actually in the lead in a seat that had been Conservative for 17 years. As the night wore on, however, it was clear that the numbers adding up to victory just weren't there for the Liberals, and people began to realize that it was not to be. Down the road in Bay Bulls, the Conservatives weren't overconfident. They watched as once solid Tory polls slipped to the Liberals. In the end, however, with the final polls reporting, they held a seat by less than 150 votes. The final difference may have been organization. The Conservative election machine that was once Charlie Powers worked well this time for Loyola Sullivan.
I think it was grassroots organisation and the people you see all around here. We just got out and worked hard, and we had a tremendous local organisation here, and I guess they believed in me, and I believed in all my workers, and we worked extremely hard. I think we outworked the opposition.
As for the import of the by-election, Conservative leader Len Sims says there was a clear message last night from both Nescopy and Ferryland to Clyde Wells. The first opposition candidate elected in 5 by-elections since the Wells government took over, and a popular vote that puts the Conservatives within 4% of the Liberals.
One of the problems we had in Ferryland was that a lot of our supporters didn't get out. But the reality is that overall, if you look at the popular vote, as I say, province-wide, from 3 distinctly different regions of this province, you will clearly see that for the last 8 months, what we have been saying is actually the fact. And the fact is that the people of this province are not satisfied with the present government. There is a lot of dissatisfaction. There is momentum moving towards our party, and we'll continue to build in that area.
So Loyola Sullivan takes his seat in the House of Assembly as a Conservative, the first Conservative to win in a by-election since Premier Wells took office. This is Jim Furlong for First Edition.
Meanwhile, in the other provincial by-election on Thursday night, the province's Justice Minister finally won a seat in the House of Assembly. Ed Roberts won the by-election in Nescopy Thursday night when he defeated Conservative opponent Bill Flowers by about 500 votes. Meanwhile, in St. John's on Friday, Premier Clyde Wells responded favourably to the Liberal victory.
Needless to say, I'm quite delighted at the result in Nescopy for a couple of reasons. It's a good, solid win, but that was also a Liberal seat before. But primarily it ensures the legitimacy of Mr. Roberts as a minister, and I'm happy to have his services continuing to be available to the government and people of the province, because I think he has a great deal to contribute.
We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have news from the fishery from the past 6 days. Fishery officials from all sectors met in St. John's on Friday to discuss what effect a cutback in northern cod quotas would have on the Newfoundland economy. Federal Fisheries Minister John Crosbie heard concerns about compensation for fishermen who will be affected by such an announcement. In the end, the minister gave assurances that there will be a compensation package. But as we hear in this report from NTV's Darren Rogers, no time frame has been set.
Federal Fisheries Minister John Crosbie and Premier Clyde Wells stopped cutting each other today over the Constitution to talk about the northern cod crisis. Both men met with company officials, union members, and fishery advisory people in St. John's. The federal minister was looking for input on the need for federal compensation for fishermen and fish plant workers. Mr. Crosbie is expected to announce either major cuts in cod quotas or a moratorium on northern cod in a week or two. After today's meetings, Mr. Crosbie said compensation will be available, but wouldn't speculate on the extent of it or when the compensation package would be announced.
There are always great problems of who's really affected and who isn't. I mean, with every scheme that you come up with. So we'll have to do our best and hope that we're meeting all the genuine needs.
Premier Clyde Wells said the compensation issue is seriously important and he said how the package would be handled had already been determined.
On a process for addressing the urgent problem. There is an urgent, immediate need of fishermen and fish plant workers to know where their income next week is going to come from. And that
Earl McCurdy of the Fishermen's Union agrees with the Premier, saying there are people out there that need compensation now, not in a few weeks after the quota is announced.
There's a lot of long-term decisions had to be made and all that, but right now, people in coastal communities in this province are in desperate personal circumstances. There's an absolutely urgent need for that to be addressed. I'm confident that the Minister has got that message.
The Federal Fisheries Minister will be back in Ottawa on Monday, preparing to make decisions on quotas and compensation. For First Edition, I'm Darren Rogers.
With all the bad news from the fishery, it's nice every now and then to hear something positive. Well, on Wednesday, we had a good news story from the fishery. Newfoundland entertainer Peter Francis Quinlan, along with other notable performers from the province, released a new album. The proceeds raised from the sale of Singing for Fishermen will provide 2 scholarships through Memorial University. The awards will be given to members of the families of fisher people in the province. Darren Rogers had more on the release from Wednesday.
Peter Francis Quinlan got the idea to try to help Newfoundland fishermen a year ago when he was in Toronto. He kept hearing of plant closures and massive layoffs in his home province on television. So together with A. Frank Wills and a fellow Newfoundlander he met at a club, Debbie Jordan, they formed Singers for Fishermen. A group of Newfoundland performers and friends took a number of favorite Newfoundland songs such as I Lobster But Never Found Her.
Well, I lobster, but then I found her. Octopus is facing, he'll only break her heart.
And of course the ode to Newfoundland.
We love thee, we love thee, we love thee, frozen land.
And put together a very unique album, with the focus of the new album a new song, written by Quinlan, called Singing for Fishermen.
We are singing for fishermen, we're from Newfoundland. The ocean is our way of life, and island our homeland.
Peter Francis Quinlan says the album will be marketed all over the world, and a $100,000 scholarship will be set up to help fishermen's children pay for college tuition to study marine biology and other fishery-related studies.
Because a lot of this problem was technology ran ahead of nature, and we never caught up with it fast enough. And if we didn't do something about it in that sense, it would just keep on going. So
A. Frank Willis, Debbie Jordan, and Quinlan are delighted with the response the album has received in Toronto and hopes it will catch on everywhere.
At large, and I wrote a song called Grandpa's Motorboat about my grandfather and his fishing days, and there are lots of other fishing songs that I do on stage, so I'm reminded every night that I perform about what's going on when I'm singing about fishing.
The album will be available in local record stores in a day or two, and worldwide marketing will begin very soon.
So it's We Are the World, Newfie style.
Yeah. Where the plans have closed down one by one, there's nothing left to do.
We're so far away, but we think of home, and our prayers go out for you.
We are singing for fishermen, we're from Newfoundland.
For First Edition, I'm Darren Rogers.
We'll show you more of Singers for Fishermen towards the end of the program, but right now we'll take a short break, and when we come back, more on the constitutional dilemma.
NTV. You never know where you'll find a Newfoundlander.
On Wednesday, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney invited the country's first ministers to meet with him in Ottawa to discuss the Constitution. Premier Clyde Wells will be attending that meeting, and on Friday, Michael Harris spoke with former Premier Brian Peckford about what results Newfoundlanders should expect to see come out of the meeting.
Brian Peckford, it's that time again. Clyde Wells is on his way back to Ottawa.
We're at Meech 2, as it were. A lot of people in this province think that things are so terrible now that if he could work a deal that either included a sure start for Hibernia, some sort of resolution of Lower Churchill, or some sort of economic package for fishermen's relief, he would be very wise to do some horse trading. If you were going up there, faced with the economic situation Newfoundlanders are looking at today, would you be saying off the top, I will not budge on a Triple E Senate?
I would not be saying I wouldn't budge, no. I would be dealing. I don't know but it's too late for him to deal. I think he could have dealt at the end 2 years ago, but I'm not so sure there's too much thing on the table for him. I think there's a lot of bad blood around. I'm not so sure how much is on the table. I think there may be something on the table as it relates to the Lower Churchill. Don't think there's anything there to do with Hibernia, and there could be as it relates to the whole business of relief for the fishery. I don't perceive the Senate as a principle the way the Premier does. I don't think that is a principle. And we can have 50 senators up there, and I won't do anything for Newfoundland. You know, political power comes from economic power. We don't have it. We should start cutting some good deals.
Premier Wells has said in the past, he said it at Meech Lake, this is our Constitution, this is not politics. And yet Brian Mulroney is summoning the premiers there for lunch. He says, look, we're going to offer you a short-term political deal. Let's talk turkey. Let's get the cards out. And if we can't do it, Ottawa is going to move alone and put a resolution to the House of Commons. Do you think Newfoundland will be well served if Ottawa moves unilaterally?
Could not be, unless we start, doing some deals there. We could find ourselves, I think the package that we put together that will go to the House of Commons will be 50% of the population, so that we're effectively, linked out of this one. So we're into a dangerous game, and if we're talking about rolling dice, even though Mulroney said it, and in history will always attack him for him, there's a lot of dice being rolled now about Newfoundland's future, and I'm very, very deeply concerned about it.
Listen, last week, Joe Clark came into St. John's, and if anyone was listening to what he had to say, they could not miss the connection between the economic issues involved and this constitutional issue, which is this Prime Minister's issue. Clyde Wells did not react to that comment.
Exactly. And look, there's no question. I mean, Hibernia is another deal, but everything else is on the table. Lower Churchill will take Quebec, and it'll take the federal government with $1 billion guarantee. There's a $350, $380 million economic plan that Newfoundland wants to go with. There's another $1 billion for the fishery over the next 3 or 4 years. The message is there. Mr. Clark gave it. 2 and 2 equals 4 on a base of 10. We better start listening.
Okay, the one other thing. This is the Premier who said no province of Canada can end up with greater constitutional authority or legal authority than any other if he is to agree. There is no possibility, in my view, that Clyde Wells could ever agree to a veto for Quebec. And on that issue, you don't need 7 and 50. You need unanimity.
Exactly.
Do you think that Clyde Wells is prepared to stand up behind that principle and be the deal breaker?
That's what it looks like to me, but I think he's going to have to keep his promise to reference it back to the people of Newfoundland. We could be looking at 2 referendums in Newfoundland between now and December.
What do you
one
think?
Provincial, one federal.
What do you think would happen if Clyde Wells did what he did the last time, or almost did, by coming back and saying either a referendum or a vote in the House of Assembly? Do you think Newfoundlanders would back him in his principled stand? This is history, not politics, or would they say, we're starving?
I think the economics are getting to take over. I don't think we're in the same circumstances we were 2 years ago. I think economics is going to rule here as we play this out in the fishery, and so therefore it's going to be far more difficult for the Premier.
Okay, last question. You've been there, you sat at that table, you know these people. You know perhaps better than most just how upset Brian Mulroney was after the last go-around. Would you say that if Clyde Wells could make a deal with Brian Mulroney, there is a possibility that this Prime Minister could resign and the Conservatives could go into the next federal election with a new leader?
Yes. I think if there is a deal and Mulroney is safe on it and it gets through and Quebec is back into the fold, no question you'll be looking at a new leader.
If you were sitting at the table, what would you do on Monday?
What would I do on Monday? I would start building some bridges to those provinces who have been on the federal side as it relates to Senate reform. I would go with an equitable Senate with some additional powers that I could be able to get for the Senate that you can't get if it was equal, and then I'd make my other deals, not on Hibernia because I don't think that's in the cards, but as it relates to Lower Churchill and Barossa and with the feds, as well as some packages for economic relief over a 5-year period, not a 3.
Brian Peckford, thanks for coming in.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment with our final report on Week in Review.
Earth. To all those that share this planet, the call has been placed to lead us into the future. Captain Canada has answered.
To Captain Canada, the path has never been more clear. It means leading by example, shining our light across this borderless world so that all will be free to reach their heights and share in each other's vision. It means nurturing our world with compassion so that we truly recognize our interconnectedness. For Canada, as we weave our mosaic into the 21st century, our vision will be called upon. It is up to us. At NTV, we recognize the unique place history has given us. So, step up, Canada. It's our time to shine. Be a beacon of light and answer the call. NTV, Canada's leading superstation.
As you saw earlier in the program, the people of this province looked on Thursday to the NOIA conference meeting for some sign from Federal Energy Minister Jake Epp that a new partner for the Hibernia project had been found. We now know that Jake Epp had encouraging words. Yes, there are new potential partners, but a final agreement with those new partners is still some months away. Nevertheless, Jake Epp, the Federal Energy Minister, was our newsmaker of the week.
We have become used to waiting in Newfoundland. With the fishery, we waited first for a 12-mile territorial limit. We waited again for a 200-mile economic zone. We wait again now for word of a fish aid package from Ottawa. With offshore oil, it has been the same thing. We waited for years for an agreement with Ottawa to get the Hibernia project off the ground. Latterly, we have stood again in waiting, looking for a new Hibernia partner following the departure of Gulf from the project. For the past several days now, we in the business of news have been dutifully reading the signs for some indication on whether or not that new partner had been found. Would a Newfoundland Ocean Industries Association luncheon in St. John's, in which Jake Epp was scheduled to speak, be the proper place to make the announcement? Would John Crosbie be present in the province at the same time? If he's at the luncheon, that's a good sign. If he isn't, no announcement would likely be made. Would Clyde Wells be invited? What would it mean if he were elsewhere engaged? Could there be an announcement on Hibernia without an agreement on the Constitution? The subtleties of our nation's politics. These are the eternal questions pondered by the scribes of Newfoundland in recent weeks, reading the bones and looking to the office of Jake Epp for word. It is an important word. There is no fishery. Hibernia was supposed to blunt the tip of that economic arrow. Without a continuation of the stalled mega project, a grim economic situation in Newfoundland might turn catastrophic. People who 2 months ago didn't even know who Jake Epp was quite suddenly knew that somehow our prospects were linked to things the minister said and did. It is ironic, to say the least, that it was the failure of the fishery that many people believe was the major impetus to getting the government moving on Hibernia. Faced with the prospect of aid to the province on a scale heretofore unknown, finding another partner to replace Gulf became part of the federal government's priority agenda. Today we found out from Jake Epp that the mission, the search, has been successful. We need only wait a little while longer. But we are good at it. We have much practice at waiting. Federal Energy Minister Jake Epp is our newsmaker of the week.
And those are the top news stories for the week ending June 26, 1992. I'm Fred Hutton. For all of us here at NTV News, thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And as we leave you today, another look at Singers for Fishermen.
We are singing for fishermen. We're from Newfoundland. The ocean is our way of life, and island our homeland. We are singing for fishermen, their family and friends. May tomorrow bring plenty, my son, may the catch be yours again.
The ocean is a desert now, lifeless like the moon.
The boats are tied up at the wharf, they won't be out this June.
Where the plans have closed down one by one, there's nothing left to do.
We're so far away, but we think of home, and our prayers go out for you.
We are singing for fishermen. We're from Newfoundland. The
the ocean can be cruel.
Was it fate that caused this tragedy? Mother Nature is no fool.
Well, better days, I hope and pray, will come again real soon. And the fishermen will sail again when the boats go out in June. We are singing